Uh, it's a part of, I think, of English teaching that is often neglected, and we're going to give you some ideas about how to pay a bit more attention to it and some fun ways to incorporate it into your lessons. Okay. As always, you will receive a certificate of participation and a webinar handout in the next few days. I'm afraid the ones for last week went out a bit late due to some organizational problems. But these ones, I'll try to make sure they get out tomorrow. If you don't get them or you're missing ones from previous weeks, the email address is on your screen there, and it's at the bottom of the screen on every slide. So just note that down, send us off an email, and I'll get that back to you. Uh, there is a handout with this week. We also has a worksheet on it that you can print out and use in your classes. So all the information from the slides and also some useful links will be in that. Okay. That, as I said, pronunciation is really important, and therefore they're central to speaking English naturally and competently. They really influence how meaning is conveyed and how conversations flow, and how easy students are understood. Not only by mother tongue speakers but by other non-native speakers. So this can be a real problem if two people with not great pronunciation meet, then can be sort of multiply the problems. Okay, mastering pronunciation can be tricky. Okay? Obviously, for teenagers too, who might not have the motivation to do it. Okay, they're still developing confidence in speaking and may feel a bit self-conscious about practicing these sort of unfamiliar sounds. Okay, but we've tried to incorporate in this webinar these playful activities, games, and exercises to make it enjoyable and motivating. Okay. Let us know in the chat. The chat is open, so you can send messages to us. Let us know if you have favorite ways of practicing these skills, and if you do pronunciation games or anything like that in your lessons, it'd be interesting to know. We always have some objectives. So at the end of this session, we hope you'll be better able to understand the areas of pronunciation teachers are expected to focus on. Use pronunciation training techniques for individual sound sentences and connected speech, and also obviously to make pronunciation fun, varied, and confidence building for teenage learners. Just a note too that we're not only going to be talking about pronunciation here, but an aspect which I guess sort of overlaps with pronunciation, which is intonation. Okay. Antonella mentioned she uses drills in classes, and Giovanna some role plays and singing. Okay. Julia drilling, listening on interesting topics. Yeah, these are all great ideas. Okay. It's often become a bit unfashionable to drill students too much in pronunciation, thinking that it's sort of a boring, repetitive task. But I think certainly a place for drilling. Okay, and we'll be looking at that a bit later. I think we'll be doing some drills to each other, okay, later in the thing. I think Ruth. Okay. With that,
Okay.
I'll hand over to Ruth, who's going to talk about what is pronunciation. I think this is your slide, is it? Sorry,
It
Ruth. Yeah,
is, it
I beg
is.
pardon.
So pronunciation, it's interesting because nobody really thinks of what pronunciation entails. Intonation is part of pronunciation. So when we teach pronunciation, we're supposed to teach intonation as well. So it's not just the isolated sounds, it's not just isolated words. When we teach pronunciation, we are expected to teach how to produce vowel and consonant sounds. Okay, this is particularly important because some students speak a language that doesn't share the same sounds, so they're completely unfamiliar with those, and they don't have any opportunity to practice them. Okay, so it is important to give them the opportunity to practice those vowels that they never use, like or that sound in English that everybody likes, and is so characteristic, and the for example, which may be challenging for some students. So we are expected to teach that. Also, word stress, which is which syllable in a word is emphasized. And this is very important because it changes meaning sometimes. Okay, sometimes you have even the type of word like produce is a verb, and produce is a noun. And it's just word stress. Then sentence stress, which is going to be really interesting when we look at the games. I think that's a better way to explain it. Okay, in English, we do stress different words, not all of them. They don't carry the same weight in the sentence as in other languages, like Latin languages. Connected speech is also part of pronunciation, and this is particularly important because when you understand how words blend together in natural speech, you're better able to understand and also to sound more natural. So, for example, when someone says, "Oh, sorry, I don't have that," okay, I'm afraid, I'm afraid I don't have it, okay? I'm afraid sounds like one word, is not I am afraid. Okay, and that sometimes is quite hard to get when you're a lower level learner. So it's important to teach it. Obviously, intonation, again, this is going to be a fun one when we talk about the different games we've prepared for you. So the rise and fall of the speaker's voice conveys meaning, and that is very important. Rhythm goes with it. Rhythm is a pattern of stress in a sentence, and it's what gives English its characteristic beat is to sound natural, how we actually, the flow of the language.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point. I mean, Italian's a language which has each syllable has the same duration in general, whereas in English we have the same duration but between stresses. So where I think Italian's a syllable based pronunciation, whereas English is syllable sorry stress, okay, or the emphasis, and so it changes totally. So we have go very quickly between parts of the words or parts of the sentence that are not stressed. Okay, whereas Italians will go, each syllable will generally have the same strength. So it's something that changes, and it takes a bit of getting used to. And over the years, I think I've managed to get some activities where students can really, find this. And sometimes it can be a little bit repetitive, but I think repetition's really the key to getting these. And I think what you're going to see now, this webinar is, the repetition, making it fun. Okay, so we can still have that element of repetition because that's the only way you're going to learn, but to make it fun, I think is the key. Yeah.
Absolutely, practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
So why do we
Sorry.
teach pronunciation? I mean, we've covered this already. Let's recap a little bit. So it helps students be understood and understand others. Good pronunciation encourages speaking. Sometimes teenagers are afraid, they're scared to talk. They're not that confident because they're unsure of pronunciation. So this is an empowering tool for them. And stress and intonation change meaning and emotion. And some English sounds don't exist in the students' mother tongue. And the intonation patterns may differ as well. And as George pointed out, why not make it fun? Let's make it a task. Let's make it a game. Let's make it a challenge. Emphasize that rhythm, intonation, and embed it into real communication. Not just repetition, but let's not be scared of repeating within that context.
Oh, sorry, one moment. So we're going to have a look at this rhythm and stress game. So, we're going to have try to make students hear and feel this English sentence stress. So make practice the physical, memorable, and fun. Okay. We're going to try to build awareness that rhythm affects meaning and naturalness. So, that uh, if you get the rhythm correct, then there's more understandable. It's you're going to convey what you want to convey, okay, rather than something unintentional. Okay. So let's have a look at this procedure. So we're gonna model the stress. So you can put a sentence on the board, for example, just something simple like this one. I'm not going to pronounce it yet, okay, but so you can say it slowly. In this case, tapping out the syllables, or at least not the stressed syllables, in fact, as I was saying earlier, not every syllable, because every syllable is not going to be accented. So in this case, and I find in general that it's the parts that carry the real meaning, the parts that can vary and change the whole meaning of the sentence that's going to be emphasized. And even though object pronouns and subject pronouns obviously do change the meaning, they're usually quite obvious by the placement because they're usually at the beginning or the end. Okay. And so it's the verbs, it's the adjectives, it's the nouns. Is the prepositions if they carry a lot of meaning, if it's a phrasal verb or something like that, or that I'm saying it's on the table, not under the table. Okay. But if it's just a general dependent preposition, then it's generally not going to be emphasized. So in this, we would say we'd get the students going. It could be clapping, it could be tapping the table. Okay. I can't believe it. Okay. So I can't believe it. Okay. Get them all doing that. And therefore, those are the words they're stressing. And by stressing those syllables, the other parts of the sentence become less stressed. And that's often the hard part. It's not really hard to stress a syllable, but it's hard to say a sentence and just obscuring some of the parts. Okay.
I think the clapping is also very good for kinesthetic learners, learners that want to do things with their body that cannot stand still, really. And we have Maria Katerina here saying that she teaches 11 to 13-year-olds. The clapping stress game works really well for that
Yeah.
age, and they get it really quickly, don't they, Josh?
Exactly, and these are sort of things they might be doing in other parts of their school experience, not just in English. So, in music or whatever, things like that. So I think it's really a useful thing to do. Okay, so get all the students. So obviously the teacher demos it first. Okay, and then get all the students to do that. So everyone's chanting this. I can't believe it. And again, it doesn't need to be a sentence that you're just making up. You can incorporate this. If you're doing, for example, literature or history in your English classes, sometimes you might just want to have one of those sentences and just take that from there and get them to emphasize this. Or if you're doing conditionals or something like that, have a look at it. Okay, work
Mhm.
out which are the stress ones. So it doesn't necessarily need to be a full lesson. You can even just take a break, 5 minutes doing this incorporated into the rest of the lesson.
Sorry, Josh, I'm just going to address something here in the chat because we have Alessandra say that students are usually afraid to talk. That's true, and we've done quite a few webinars, about how to encourage students to speak in class. So, I invite you all to go into our YouTube channel and take a look at our webinars because we have quite interesting ideas, I think, there to help you encourage your students speak English in class. One of them is teaching pronunciation.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So again, you can repeat this with new sentences. So again, once they've got one, okay, it's going to be not so useful for them just to be able to say one sentence, but you want them to get used to it. And sort of some of these things, particularly pronunciation, I find it's something that also almost works subconsciously. You learn this pronunciation, you learn these rules without actually having been made explicit. So again, she bought a new phone. Okay. We're going to the cinema tonight. Okay. So these sort of things, again, going to the cinema tonight. Okay. These are the parts that are the important parts. To the is not really important because after going, you're almost always going to have to, and before cinema, you're almost always going to have the. So these sort of things, they don't carry a lot of meaning in the sentence. To be honest, if I said we going cinema tonight, you would probably understand me anyway. Okay? And if I only pronounce those ones, it sort of almost sounds like the full sentence. We're going cinema tonight. Okay? You could always put those in automatically. Okay.
Yeah, sometimes you can't hardly hear it, right? It's just
Hmm.
like it's as if it's not there. That's why it's difficult for students to understand because they are expecting every single word to carry the same stress. And I think you mentioned a very important point there, Josh, which is habit. You can turn this into a habit and incorporate it in every class. So students get used to it and they keep learning it, like different sentences in every class. Choose one sentence, try it out in your classes, and then make it a habit so they know what they have to do. They know they're doing the clapping and it becomes a habit.
I think it's important too that we often find students who like have a lot of problems with listening because they say the people are rushing, then I'm not hearing all the words, they're speaking
Exactly.
fast. I find if they're getting the pronunciation, if they're getting connected speech, that's when they start to improve their listening a lot because then by producing these things and knowing the words that they're not emphasizing, that are sort of getting connected to the previous word or the next word, their mind puts them in to the listening. Okay, so that then they'll be able to understand a lot better. These are not two different skills, really. They're sort of so connected. Yeah.
So true. Right. Oh, we're going to look at a very interesting game, the plot twist, how stress and intonation changes
Sorry.
meaning. Okay, let's take a look at that sentence and just play around yourselves. Would the meaning change if you put the stress on a different word? For example, I didn't say you stole the money. Josh, do you want to have a go?
I didn't say you stole the money.
I didn't say you stole the money.
I didn't say you stole the money.
Okay, this is quite a fun one. If you write a sentence on the boards and then you get one student, you give them the function, the meaning, okay, that they need to convey, and they try in front of the class. It is quite fun because sometimes they get it, sometimes they don't. Even the person who's trying to make it happen finds it really difficult. So you kind of have to do it first with all the different possibilities and then you can distribute different meanings and they have to come up and say it, produce a sentence, and then the others have to guess what the meaning is, the intentional meaning is. And this is quite good fun. I've heard good laughs in class with this one. Haven't you, Josh?
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, it's just to be clear, just to maybe a bit of transparency here. What we're trying to say is that if I said, for example, I didn't say you stole the money, what I'm emphasizing is that the money is not what I'm saying you stole. Okay, it's something else. Okay, if I say I didn't say you stole the money, what I might be saying is that I implied it, but I didn't literally say it. If I say I didn't say you stole the money, it's someone else. Okay. So these sort of things that every one of those underlined words, which, okay, this is quite an extreme example. Not all sentences are like this, but, you can emphasize any part of that sentence apart from the, okay, and it will sort of emphasize and therefore have a different implied meaning, okay, and it can really show students. And again, this is not so different in many languages. You can emphasize different parts to change something, but it really shows the students that the part that they're emphasizing is the part that's important in the sentence, and the parts that are not emphasized are the ones that are of less importance. I mean, this makes sense that we're going to stress the ones that are important too. Okay.
Yes, Maria, this is doable at any level. You just need to choose the right sentence that they can understand. And they do enjoy it a lot. And it is a very good way to teach sentence stress. What are the words where we put all the emphasis, all the stress? Why do we do that? We are trying to convey some meaning with this. And that's a very interesting way to do it.
I mean, in
Now,
each sentence, you're never going to really have the emphasized, okay? Because I mean, maybe in some others it could be possible, but very rarely, um, that you're going to have the emphasized. But that's one of the words that is almost never stressed in any sentence. Okay, these sort of articles generally don't get stressed. Okay. Another fun way of doing this is to get the same sentence with different emotions. Okay. So, okay, you could have these, for example, really, okay, a very common word in English could be if you're excited, it could be really. Okay? I'm like, excited. It's like I don't quite believe it. Okay. Whereas if I'm angry, I might say really. Okay. In this sort of sense, I'm showing, I'm frustrated. Is that really what you're going to do? Okay. So Again, you could get different sentences, put them in different emotions. Again, I emphasize if you can't come up with a sort of flexible sentence of your own, use ChatGPT. Ask it. Say, give me a sentence that can have different meanings according to the emotion, and then it will give you these, and you can try them out. Okay, and think about how someone would say this. Okay?
You could even use a random word like teapot and then get
Yeah,
teapot,
this is like I
teapot,
think something actors do.
teapot, you
Okay?
know, and then you can create different meaning with just a word that is meaningless. So is the intonation what gives the meaning to
I think I saw some actors practicing this where they have like a whole conversation just using the same word, okay, but putting new emphasis on it and then accusing someone defending themselves, all of the same intonation, but with
it? Yes,
with the actual content of the words not changing.
totally.
Lara says seriously could be too,
Of course.
seriously, seriously. I'm explaining to you. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Seriously? Okay. I'm doubting. Okay. Um, we're going to look at some minimal pairs. Now, what are minimal pairs? They are word pairs, okay, in English, in other languages too, but we're going to be looking at the ones in English that differ by just one sound. We're going to be looking particularly about vowels in English, particularly because this is sort of the area where these things are a bit different in English, particularly to Italian. Most of the consonant sounds have some correspondence, even if they're not spelt exactly the same in Italian. But the vowels, as everyone in this webinar surely knows, the vowels in English are sort of a little bit random, how they're written. Okay. So in
It's
this
not
case,
only for Italian learners, though. I think all learners struggle with English vowels because there are tons of them.
yeah, there's a lot more in English than in many other languages, I believe. And
Mhm.
particularly, I think, due to the great vowel shift, I think this is our spelling stayed the same, whereas our pronunciation started changing. Okay.
Exactly.
Here's some common ones that are useful for Italian students who have problems with English vowels. Okay, so we have the I sound versus the E sound. Okay, so for example, ship, sheep, live, leave, sit, seat. Okay, and some other maybe ones that probably on the tip of your tongue, but a bit more vulgar to mention in English. I'm sure people can understand what I'm putting out there. Okay, we also have the sound versus the sound. Okay, and again, I'll repeat that: versus Okay, so we have cap, cup, bat, bot, lack, luck. As you can see, the only difference in these words is the vowel sound. Okay. And look, to be honest, there's even sometimes some of these words are even the same, spelt the same. Okay. So we could have the present read versus the past read. Okay. Where spelt even the same.
Mhm.
Okay?
I think one of the things that we cannot neglect is help our students to articulate this. And sometimes you can actually exaggerate it or put your mouth in a certain position, like
Mm,
cat, fake smile, cat, cup, cat, cup. So don't be scared of doing this. Articulate it, show it to your students, help them use their body to produce a sound because they're not used to it.
exactly. Okay. And then we have versus a. Okay. So for example, met, mat, men, man, send, sand, bed, bad, and said, sad. Yeah. And I think finally, yes, okay, we have u versus u. Okay, so full, full, pull, pull, look, Luke. Okay. Um, Again, practicing these trains the students to hear and pronounce important sound differences, improving clarity and preventing misunderstandings. So obviously, the more we practice it, the more their pronunciation will get better. But not only that, they'll be able to distinguish them in other people's speech as well. Okay.
They're hard to master, I would say. So games come in handy here. Definitely, Alessandra. Minimal pair games. That's what we're going to look at right now.
In the worksheet, I have included this minimal prayers practice. Okay, so these are some, not by any means all of them. There's hundreds of them, maybe even thousands in English. Okay, and so these are ones between the short O and the long O sound. Okay, and again, sometimes you'll be able to find charts of this sort of the diagram, the cross section of how the mouth would be, the palate, the tongue, things like this. Um, those could be useful. Okay, to be honest, I often, as Ruth was saying, maybe just the exaggeration of the pronunciation to get their knowledge of the difference, and then that can be scaled back a bit. You know, they won't need to be saying ship, sheep all the time. Okay, but that they can start to sort of make that vowel a little shorter. Okay. In fact, both of them are almost the same length in connected speech, but they just have a little bit different quality. Okay. But yeah, certainly if you want to train them with the where their tongue, where their soft palate should be, okay, that can help
Mhm.
too.
I think Gaetano is saying that in that case, generally the context helps. And absolutely, let's put them in context. Let's let's show them misunderstandings. And they could be quite fun as well. Depending on your class, you can choose like really fun ones. And Alessandra was saying that it's difficult for them to know and to spot where the sound comes from, how to articulate it. I think it is important if it becomes a problem. Although sometimes we teachers know quite a lot about these things, and it's about helping them practice. So we have to keep it to a minimum, really. So instead of getting too deeply into it, let's just make it simple. Let's show them how to do it briefly, helping them articulate, and in small steps because that's the best way they're going to get it. Okay, they might not get it right at the beginning. It's just, little by little, day by day, practice by practice.
We're going to have a look at one of these games, okay, to train students to hear and distinguish these tricky English sounds through a competitive, engaging activity. Okay. So again, you might see where I'm going to go with this, okay, but
Mhm.
you can choose some minimal pairs. They can be from that the worksheet that I had on the previous page and will be in your handout, or it could be a mix of different sounds. Obviously it might be worth you well, it would be certainly worth you going through these a bit and explaining the differences first, letting them hear them first. Okay. But choose 5 to 8 pairs. Okay. For example, these ones you can see there. Okay. Write them on the board, project them, however you want to do it, so that at least so students can see. Maybe you could even put them up on the board. The students can write them down. Okay. Then, as in most games, you should always start with a teacher demonstration so you can model it yourself. Okay. So you say one word clearly. Okay. Um, so you're only saying one of these words. Okay. And the students raise up their left hand or their right hand. Left hand if they see the one on the A column, uh, left on the A and right on the B. Okay. And just so that you can they can have some way of distinguish it. Okay. Um, repeat it a few times. Okay, so they're not just guessing on one pronunciation. Okay, but remember, you're only saying one of these words. You're not saying both of them. Okay. Why don't we play it together and you can write in the chat. Now, be aware that the chat, uh, Zoom has disabled the chat, making it public. So we can see your chat. Okay, so we'll all the messages you send, we can say. So I think Ruth might be monitoring the chat so she can tell what people say. So if you hear the word on the left, okay, under the A column, I want you to write A in the chat. If you hear the word in B, okay, you can write B. Okay. And again, I'll say it a few times each time. Okay. Pan, pan, pan.
Woo, we've got A's and B's.
Good. Quite a few of both. I think now
Yeah.
we're getting a few more B's than A's. Okay.
Yes.
I was saying pan. Okay, the second one from B. Okay, pan. Okay, so the difference there would be A would be pen and B would be pan. Okay, they sound a little bit different, but not very much. Okay,
Then again, unless you're from New Zealand, right, Josh?
not, 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 not.
You got it
I think there
right.
are almost everyone's got that here. Okay, so that was the one under A on the left, not. Okay, the negative. Okay, so what I was saying was not. The other one would be note. Okay, let's go fly, fly. Okay, I would expect most Italians get this correct because it's not really a big difference in Italian, between English and Italian there. Okay. Although if you have some Chinese, Japanese students in your class, they may need this, have this problem. And I know a lot of Italian teachers nowadays have a lot of students in class whose first language might not be Italian. So those sort of things, while we generally have more problems with vowels for Italian speakers when speaking English, other languages may find the consonants a bit more difficult. Man, 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 man. Bit of mix here. Okay, I think
Yeah.
most people in general, are getting it right. So yes, I was saying B, man, the singular. Okay, which is on the right there. So I was saying the one on the right, which is man. Okay. And the other one is men. Okay. Men. Don't worry if you got it wrong. Okay.
That's
You
great.
can always blame the internet connection a little bit. Okay. And last one, leave, leave, leave. Almost everyone got that right. Yeah, it is the second one. So under B, leave. Okay, as opposed to live. Okay.
You can actually
Oh,
encourage your students to do this one as well themselves. Okay.
okay.
You don't have to do it yourself because it just becomes a little bit more fun when they try and they are aiming at pronouncing B, but they pronounce A because they're mistaken, and it's quite good fun. I think being able to get it wrong is also very important. So when we allow our students to play around, to get it wrong, to experiment with it, is when we're actually encouraging them to do it better.
Yeah, for sure. Now that was the part of the teacher demoing it, okay, but when you're doing it in your classes, I would imagine you want to incorporate the students, or else it becomes listening, not a speaking, okay, or a pronunciation. So in this, put the students into pairs. One student reads a word from the list, again, secretly chosen. The partner must guess which one. Okay, so it might be best to actually get the students to underline secretly without telling them, so that they can't just change it every time. Okay, and again, maybe you want to even get the students to drill this. You could take the students off and drill them correctly. Okay, um, and then swap after a few rounds, so the other student has to do it. Okay, and again, they could sometimes do the ones that were online, sometimes do the other ones. Okay, you can't just do the opposite, or it'll be obvious what it is. Okay, and then you could even have a team race. Okay, divide the class into two teams. Say a word. The first team to call out the correct word scores a point. Okay, call out the correct word, for example, A or B. Okay, minimum pair bingo. So give students bingo cards with minimum pair words. I think someone in the chat was saying that they played with these flashcards, those sort of things. Okay. Say words at random, student cross them off. Okay. First to complete a row wins. Okay. Guess the word with actions. Instead of shouting, students stand up for a word A or stay seated for word B. Okay, so in these sort of things, they don't just have to put up one hand or the other hand or say A or B. They actually need to stand up or sit down. Again, the sort of movement is always a great thing, particularly with younger students. Okay. Um, a wrap up. Okay, again, at the end of the class, it's always good to do a little bit of revision. Highlight these sounds again. Okay. Encourage the students to practice these words at home by recording themselves. Okay. I'm going to hand over to Ruth.
Okay, so this is the
Drilling.
question, isn't it? To drill or not to drill? So what do you think? Is it a good idea to drill in class or not? Is it yes, definitely. It is not patronizing. I think we just need to do it properly. Okay. So yes, we need to provide a model and help our learners with pronunciation. And it's a safe space. So we're just giving them the opportunity to practice the words in a safe space where we provide a model and we give them the opportunity to produce it correctly or as best as they can. Okay. And this is particularly important because some of the sounds don't exist in their language. So they need a place to practice. Okay. So, how to drill? Let's go over some steps one by one, okay? I think the most important thing from the very beginning is to check your learners' listening. And this needs to become a habit as well, is what we were talking about earlier. We need to be able to drill in each and every class because pronunciation is not just one class, it's part of each and every class. It's like when we teach bits of grammar, we teach bits of vocabulary, we teach pronunciation. It's just as important. So check their listening. Just go, everybody, listen. Very important, your gestures. And then you need to model the word or the sentence slowly and clearly. Now, it could be a sentence. Don't be scared of modeling sentences, okay? Especially for higher levels, because otherwise they don't learn to understand it or produce it, okay? Exaggerate at the beginning when necessary, but then we need to move towards natural speech, okay?
Maria points out that it could be useful to ask students to close their eyes while listening to the word. This can be a good way of focusing their attention.
I think if they're very young, I think that is great. When they're teenagers, they just don't usually do it. But I think it would actually reduce their stress and embarrassment. So that's a fantastic idea. Maria, if you can get your learners to do that, that's brilliant. Then the pattern is going to be listen and repeat. And we have to give them cues to do that. Okay? That's why, Francesca, don't worry about other people's comments. We are actually addressing all the comments. Okay? So use listen and repeat. Can you continue, Josh? Exactly. Keep the chunks small. Okay? If it's a long word or a long sentence, let's keep them short. Let's chunk it so that it is manageable and then we'll make it longer. Now, use full class drilling only. Okay? I wouldn't single people out, especially not teenagers or children. It is much better to pay attention to what they do while they do it all together because their voice fades. You know, it's like in the crowd, so they don't feel that exposed. So for me, drill, yes, but in open class, everybody together. And vary the pace for different aims. Okay, you can do slow repetition when you want them to get it right. When you want that accuracy, that's what you're aiming at. But your learners are trying really hard and they still don't get it. That's fine. It is important for them to attempt it. Okay, they need to try first. So you go slightly faster and encourage repetition for them to build their confidence, even though it is not entirely correct. And I know this is sometimes difficult, but sometimes getting a sound that you're not used to, producing a sound, is not that easy. So they have to continue practicing. And monitor and remodel. So if the class produces an incorrect sound, stop it. Stop them. Just go, okay, let's do this again all together. Model it again and have them repeat so that it doesn't continue happening. It's like when you hear those mistakes that are recurring mistakes and you stop the class and you address them, it's the same thing with pronunciation. And physical cues, the position of your mouth, use your hands like open, can, okay? Use your hands, use your face, use your body, help your learners produce a sound with exaggeration at the beginning. And then always finish with quick confidence check and always praise progress. They might not have got it perfect, but it doesn't matter. You do need to praise them for trying because this is quite embarrassing actually. You don't have the same sounds, you don't know if it's coming out right. So it is very important to praise them for trying. Okay, so let's do a quick demonstration, shall we?
Sure.
So, for example, Josh, let's pronounce, listen, okay? I'm going to pronounce a word and I would like you to repeat it, okay?
I'm the student here, by the way.
Okay?
Okay, teacher.
Comfortable. One, two, three, go.
Comfortable.
Okay, good. Let's try again. Comfortable.
Comfortable.
Okay, there are three syllables here. Comfortable. Again.
Comfortable.
Almost there. Let's try again. Comfortable.
Comfortable.
Lovely. Comfortable.
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 Well done. Fantastic. Okay. It could be patronizing. All right. So be careful with this. With higher levels, just make it fun. You're helping them learn. Allow them to laugh. Okay. They're going to burst out laughing sometimes. Okay. Because they can't
One
get it.
one thing that I've always done, and this is something I've seen, I've often told other teachers or observed other teachers not doing it, is when the student achieves the correct pronunciation, we praise them and we finish. Okay. I think what's really important is that is when we need to keep going for a bit longer. Okay. Because what you've done, if you stop at the moment they get it correct, you've actually drilled the incorrect pronunciation more than the correct pronunciation. So if I was saying uncomfortable 5 times and then the sixth time I got it correct, and you stop there, then it's much more natural for me to say uncomfortable rather than the right one. So whenever I'm doing it, I always, as soon as they get it right, you give them praise and you say again, 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 until it's like second nature. If you do that,
Absolutely.
then you'll realize that they don't make that error again. The time when they forget the pronunciation is usually when you've stopped it just after they got it correct. Okay. It can be a bit uh repetitive if they're just saying the same thing correct again and again. But again, it gets them to have that satisfaction of saying it. And again, you praise them after each time. Really important point, I think. Okay.
Excellent. Very good. I completely agree with that, Josh. Fluby is saying something about American versus British. Pronunciation is essentially mostly the same. Accents differ, and we welcome different accents. That's okay. So it doesn't matter if it's understandable and it is the right, correct pronunciation, then that's fine. And if you want to teach American English but you have a British accent, you can always use videos, you can use help, you can use a media.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wouldn't worry about it. I mean, it's any whether you got American, British, Australian, Canadian, New Zealand, South African, whatever it is, um, if it's clear and it's understandable, then you're already better than having strongly accented or badly pronounced English. Okay. So
Exactly.
if they've got like moving towards American pronunciation, then they're already a step ahead of the rest of their class.
I would like to talk about another technique, and I know it's rather late, but I think this is very important. This is something I use a lot, especially with higher levels. Okay, it is mumble drilling. Okay, it's not just the isolated drilling in full class where you listen, repeat, is that sequence. This is called mumble drilling because we're not going to listen and repeat all together in class. Okay. So, connected speech is really important, especially at higher levels as well, when you have like longer sentences with loads of auxiliary verbs. Like, for example, that one that you can see there in the presentation. I wouldn't have done that. Okay. So my learners at a B2 level start using those would have done, and they always would go like, I would not have done that, because it's quite hard, okay? And it's almost pronounced like just like one word. I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done that. So it is important to drill this. We need to provide a model because this is going to be rather challenging for them. Okay, so this is how I do it. There are different techniques. I think this one works well. So you repeat it a few times. I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done that. And then you get your students to repeat it to themselves. They need to voice it though. It's not enough with thinking about it because they need to practice it. But they're going to do it 3 times, just mumbling, not in open class, not like when we said comfortable. And we were really confident doing that in open class with all of our voice. This is going to be slightly different. They would go to themselves and do it 3 times. I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done that. Just to get the swing of it. Okay. And then you give them a few opportunities. So when you're teaching these longer type of sentences, don't forget to do that mumble drilling and help them with pronunciation. It allows students to adjust those tricky sounds at their own pace. Not if you try and do it in open class, not everybody is going to produce it at the same pace. Okay? And it reduces that embarrassment when something is this challenging.
Sorry, one moment. Okay, just to finish up, I think we're going to have a look at some tongue twisters. Okay, these are sort of fun things. Again, it can help with certain articulation, I guess. Okay, it's not really something you're trying to get them to pronounce these correctly, but it can get them sort of to master these sort of changing sounds, particularly consonant sounds in English. Okay, do you know any? Let us know in the chat. Okay. Some of the ones that I'm familiar with, okay, and I think Maurice has already mentioned one. Okay, this one's a really short one that can be really diabolically difficult to say. Do you want to try it, Ruth?
Oh, I'm really bad at this. Red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry.
Okay, oh, she did very well there. Yeah,
Thank
again,
you.
okay, you need to repeat it. So red lorry, yellow lorry, red lorry, yellow lorry, and then if you're good at it, you can get faster as well. This one I love. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. A peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked. If Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, where's the peck of pickled peppers Peter Piper picked? Right.
Well done, John.
This is one I found that I wasn't aware of before. Okay. Those 33 things that they thought through thoroughly. Okay. And one that's quite popular in the chat is she sells seashells by the seashore. The shells she sells are seashores, I'm sure. So if she sells seashells on the seashore, then I'm sure she sells seashore shells. Okay. How can you use these in class? Well, okay, get the students to do them very slowly at first and then gradually increase the speed. Okay, so Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and then get faster. You can do them in pairs, so students practice in pairs and compete for clarity and speed. So you can you can assign each student one of these, and then they have to compete. Okay, and you can have a competition. Okay, have them underline or highlight the repeated sounds before practicing. So make sure, obviously, some of these, Peter Piper. Okay, we can see it's all P's there. Okay, but other ones, she sells seashells by the seashore, the sh sound. Okay. But then at the end here, you have I'm sure, okay, which doesn't have an SH, but it has the SH sound. Okay. So they could focus on those ones too. Again, it might not be, as great as the minimal pairs or as effective as the sentence intonation, but it's fun thing that gets the students having fun and enthusiastic about it. Okay.
These teachers know quite a lot of them. That like with the Betty Bott's of Butter.
Mm,
If you can do that, all my respects. I'm really bad at this.
Well, Gaetano's giving me one in Italian. I'm going to have to pass on that, I'm afraid. I've already failed at the sotto la pancia la capra campa one. So I won't worry about this one. And get them to say it with different emotions again. That can be fun. Okay. Um,
Right, let's recap quickly. Okay, so some tips. Make the classroom a safe space. Students shouldn't feel judged on their pronunciation of new words. Encourage that mutual respect by drilling safely. Help students with all parts of pronunciation. Remember, intonation, sentence stress, unconnected speech, not only isolated words or sounds. And don't be afraid to make students repeat. Don't stop when they get it right, as Josh mentioned earlier. Drill the correct pronunciation several times more so that they become confident and used to the correct one. Integrate it with communication. Practice pronunciation in authentic contexts. That's why it's not a full class, it's part of your meaningful class. Incorporate it into your class activities.
yeah, so role plays and things like that. You can always, when they make up a conversation, before they do it in front of the class, get them to practice the intonation, the question intonation, the emphasis. Remember that when they're doing role plays, they got to not read it just like they might be reading it from a book. They're saying it. They're in a situation. They're emphasizing it. They say, I want a ticket for Rome, not for Milan. Right? These sort of things that they need to emphasize, because if they just say it with a no emphasis, no sentence intonation, then it's not really going to have the meaning. Okay, so you got to make sure they know this sort of angry, happy sort of sounds. Okay.
And give positive feedback, celebrate improvement and effort, not just perfection. They need to be encouraged to try again, and that's the only way.
And again, we're not what we need to emphasize too is that we're not expecting you or your students to be native level with no accent. Okay. Um, it's a beautiful thing to have an accent and yet speak English well. Okay. So it doesn't matter if we're not trying to say that an accent is the problem. Okay. It's just the sense of clarity and understanding. So someone can have an accent, Italian accent, French accent, Chinese accent, Indian accent, and it doesn't matter, they're still understandable. Okay, so it's an accent, something to celebrate. It means you speak at least, two languages, if not more.
And it doesn't affect pronunciation. You could have an accent and pronounce very well. And then be patient. Be patient with your students. Pronunciation develops gradually. So if you are consistent, provide playful practice, then you're setting your students to success.
Okay, just some conclusions. So let's wind up. We've gone a little bit over time today, but pronunciation really needs to be integrated into a lesson. So it helps students build confidence and fluency. So it's maybe not, you don't want to spend lessons after lesson on pronunciation, but make sure it's part of every lesson. Uh,
Turn it into a habit.
Use games. So when learners are having fun, they're more likely to practice consistently and internalize these sounds naturally. So, make sure they're doing something interesting, or, when they're doing something interesting that isn't pronunciation, you can put some aspects of pronunciation in there. Okay. Connect it to communication. So again, some of these games we've been playing, for example, the tongue twisters, they're not really communicative. Okay, those are sort of maybe a reward or something like that. But make sure it's tied into something that is going to be realistic. So a dialogue, a role play, a speaking activity in general. Okay, keep drilling, make the drilling fun. The more often you do it, the more it'll be something natural. If you do it very infrequently, the students will not respond to it very well. Okay. Encourage this experimentation and praise your students for trying. So if they make an error, it doesn't matter. Okay. Everyone makes errors in pronunciation. No one starts English or any other language pronouncing things correctly. Okay. Um, and do these fun, contextualized, and creative pronunciation practice because it can transform hesitant speakers into confident communicators. Integrating these strategies into everyday lessons, you can make pronunciation a natural, enjoyable part of language learning. Okay. Um, Let us know in the chat if you've got any suggestions for future webinars. We've got some planned, but let us know. Okay. I know some people have been writing in the chat about not receiving certificates. So please send me an email. I will get back to you and I'll send those. Just tell me which one you've missed. Okay. We'll send these ones out tomorrow. Okay. But if you don't get it, send it to Formazione. Okay. And next week we're going to be looking at emergent language and soft skills. So please join us there. These are some things that you know, you might not know what that sort of refers to, but it's going to be a really useful webinar. I think we've done it with actually it was just me. We did it live, and it was a really interesting workshop I did. Anyway, thanks a lot for your attention, and thank you, Ruth, for helping us today or for
Thank you, everybody, for your active participation, and hope to see you very soon.
thanks everyone. Bye bye bye.
Bye.